Okay, hello. Yeah. I'm Jordan Delara. I'm a junior at Drake, for those who don't know me. I'm studying actuarial science. Yeah. Woo! Yeah, and this is the story about how God changed my life. When I was young, I went to a private Christian school called Faith Lutheran all the way through 8th grade. Church was just part of my life. I would have daily devotions at school and multiple mandatory chapels throughout the week. We actually had to have a certain church attendance to go outside for recess and play on our school sports teams, so I was sure to get those church attendance in. While I was at Faith, I met the person who's had the biggest influence on me, besides Christ, my brother and my best friend. His name was Hyunjun Daniel Kim, but we all just called him Daniel. Daniel was a foreign exchange student from South Korea who ended up staying with my family for the past 10 years. Daniel is the same age as me, but because of his English, he was put one grade below me. I remember after the first year, he openly told me that he did not believe in God or anything that we were learning in school. Because I was so used to being around people who believed in God, this was scary. This was not scary because I was scared for him. Rather, it was scary because it made me think the same thing. It made me ask myself, is there a real God? Daniel and I were both pretty adventurous as kids and truly loved trying new things. So in 7th grade, while hanging out with a couple of kids from the grade above us, we got drunk for the first time. We thought it was the coolest thing ever and loved that the older kids thought that we were cool. We started hanging out with them more regularly, and more often than not, we were drinking. We also loved to hang out with my older cousin Joey. When we hung out with him, it was usually video games, anime, and some more video games. Until one night, my cousin told us he wanted to bring us to a party. While at this party, we both smoked for the first time. Again, this just became a regular part of our life. In fact, we look forward to it every weekend and use the idea of getting high on the weekend to motivate us to get us through the week. While I was in high school, I stopped regularly going to church. I considered myself a Christian, but again, I showed no signs of actually wanting to know the Lord. Daniel told me during my sophomore year that over the summer he met with his pastor and that he now believed everything the Bible says. One day, at the end of my senior year, I came home and saw a folder on the table. Sometimes my father would leave a folder full of Popeyes coupons with money in it, which meant he wanted me to go pick up some chicken for dinner. But when I opened the folder, I found that my parents were filing for divorce. So many emotions were filling my body. I was frustrated and angry that they didn't tell me themselves. I was heartbroken because I knew my parents were probably going through a really hard time. But more than anything, I was terrified. I blamed God and hid from him the whole summer and started to smoke every day. I kept asking myself, if God was real, how could he break up my family like this? I thought he was the God of love. Going into college, I continued to hide from God. The first week of college, I ended up joining Tau Kappa Epsilon, a fraternity at Drake. At the time, I loved being one of their brothers because it meant I had a place where I could go to where I didn't have to worry about partying and getting all kinds of trouble and such. Then, one day while playing basketball, I met Caleb, Trey, Nick, and Jacob. I saw that one of them had a Christian tattoo, so I asked him about it. Caleb immediately told me about campus fellowship and invited me to the next midweek. I was pretty hesitant to actually attend midweek for the first time because I was still angry with God, but eventually I decided to go and give it a try. Before the worship service even started, I could tell something was different about these people. They were all so happy to see each other, and what felt like 50 of them individually introduced themselves to me. But what really caught my eye during the service was how they worshiped. They worshiped with a level of passion that I'd never seen before in church. After this, I started to regularly attend midweek and would meet up with Caleb every week where he would challenge the way I thought. As the semester went on, I could feel the Lord changing my heart, but I still treated my faith as a hobby. I would go to midweek and church, but then still party on the weekends. I wanted to know God, but I didn't want to give up my life. Over my first year winter break, the Lord decided to humble me. I came back to campus second semester completely broken. I needed someone to save me. I felt hopeless and completely alone. Daniel knew I was going through a rough time, and so he asked if I wanted to do a Bible study with him. I agreed to read with him, and we started reading every night together. At first, it was just another way for me to talk to my brother. But then, the Lord started to open my heart to what he had been trying to tell me for the past 19 years. That he was the God of love, the God of peace, the God of hope, and that he'd given me the greatest gift of all time. I could not believe the God of the universe wanted to have a personal relationship with me so bad that he sent his own son to die on the earth and had him die for my sins. Throughout the rest of the semester, I continued to grow in my faith and found joy in the Lord. I went into the summer super encouraged and eager to share the word with my friends and tell them how the Lord changed me. Unfortunately, when I went home for summer, I stopped relying on the Lord to lead me and started to rely more on myself. I strayed farther and farther from the Lord until I got to the point where I was really annoyed to come back to school. I just spent the whole summer following my lust and desire to party. I certainly didn't want to go back to campus where I knew my roommates David and Brian would challenge me to pursue Christ instead of my flesh. I started my sophomore year guilty and ashamed whenever I went to campus fellowship events. Eventually, I decided I wanted to stop partying and I wanted to give my life for Christ. But I've been struggling with this a lot because even though I was trying to stop partying, I still really wanted to do it. I knew I needed someone to keep me accountable and help me learn how to live my life for Christ. So I asked to meet up with my, at the time, Bible study leader, Trey, and told him all about my sin. I knew he was going to agree to help to keep me accountable, but I thought he was going to be initially upset with me. I thought he was going to judge me and look down on me, but he didn't at all. He told me that Christ still loved me and that my sins were forgiven. We started to meet up weekly to read every single time, and he would share the gospel with me every single time, and continue to keep me accountable for my sin. But whenever I fell short, he would remind me of the greatness of God's love. He told me that Jesus is my shepherd, and no matter how far I stray from him, he will always chase after me and call me his. Later that semester, I decided to fully give myself to Christ. I ended up quitting my frat because I knew I wasn't going to be able to fully give my life to Christ while I had such easy access to sins that I'd struggled with for so long. I don't want you to look at me as someone who says they're a Christian and thinks that they have it all figured out, because I don't. Instead, look at me and see an example of God's incredible wealth of his grace and kindness towards us. God actually sent his one and only Son down to earth, where Jesus lived a real, perfect life and died a real death for the sins of the world. I am a sinner. I do not deserve anything that God has done for me, but he knew that, and still chose to save and redeem me, not by my own doing, but by his grace and kindness. That is why I have given my life for Christ, because of his endless mercy and love he has shown for me. As someone who has tasted from the pleasures of this earth, it is nothing in comparison to the joy that knowing the one true God has given me. If anyone has any questions or anything or wants to talk about it anywhere afterwards, I would love to talk to you about it. Don't be hesitant. I'm usually not that scary of a guy.